Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and again, thanks for joining us. Well, unclaimed property, no, it's not a scam. Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacy Garrity will join me and explain that and more. But first, let's talk about moving up Pennsylvania's presidential primary. That's a big issue and a big story, and we'll get to that and more after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, well, there are a couple of big stories that we want to cover on this week's program. Joining me to talk about some of them is Stephen Caruso. He is the Capitol reporter with Spotlight Pennsylvania. Stephen, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
I'll tell you what, we're heavily in the presidential election already. And the fact of the matter is, in Pennsylvania, we've not been relevant in the two Republicans, Democrats nominating their candidates because our late primary. And there may be a change in the offing. Talk about the change in Pennsylvania's primary next year and what it means.
Yeah, so as you said, Pennsylvania's presidential primary is usually in April. I think it's like the third or fourth Tuesday in April. That's way too late to influence, a primary in most cases. Normally it's decided in February, March, Super Tuesday. Lawmakers and, backed by, some political operatives, sometimes the parties, broadcasters, they've wanted to see that date moved up to make Pennsylvania more relevant for a bunch of reasons. That's been kind of bubbling under the surface for a while here in Harrisburg, but this year there seems to be a little bit more momentum on it because this year the normal presidential primary date for Pennsylvania was falling on Passover. I believe it was April 24th.
Jewish holiday.
Exactly, a Jewish holiday where also observant Jews wouldn't be able to go vote if they were following their faith. So there was a desire to move that date off to allow for them to participate in democracy. And so that has kind of given this nonpartisan reason to move up our primary, which some people have already wanted to do. So now there's going to be a lot of debate over what that date should fall on. The Pennsylvania Senate, controlled by Republicans, advanced a date in March. Obviously, that's also relevant for Republicans because there's a contested Republican primary that faced President Joe Biden. Democrats in the House have said they're okay with an April date, maybe early April, so just a couple weeks versus maybe a whole month earlier. Election directors, who are the people who have to then implement whatever changes the legislature makes, they're kind of more comfortable with that early April because they still have to get all the machinery of elections to work by time, for a moved up primary. But, this is an active conversation, and Governor Josh Shapiro has said he supports it. Worth noting, he's also an observant Jewish man. So, there's a lot of interest in getting this done. And I think that we're seeing what will happen. There's going to be some differences between the House and the Senate, as there usually is, but this actually seems like something they can get accomplished.
Well, let's face some other facts, and this is important. Pennsylvania is one of the most relevant states when it comes to the general election, the actual presidential election. We're one of the top, I think, 4 years ago, or almost 4 years ago, we were the most visited state by the candidates and their surrogates. But when it comes to nominating the candidates, we don't matter because for the most part, the decisions have been made on the nomination, meaning a candidate has enough delegates supporting him or her to have the nomination virtually wrapped up by the time we get to the April Pennsylvania primary.
Yeah, and I think we've seen some national party leaders, particularly in the Democratic Party, want to try to make their primary schedule reflect more of the diversity and the reality of the American electorate. Iowa and New Hampshire is starting guns, or, those states don't match how America kind of looks now. And so, we've seen that. There have been a lot of conversation about changing that up. And I think Pennsylvania, as a state that's really key, it's a swing state, that there's I like to think of Pennsylvania as a little microcosm of all of America. There's a lot of people who think it makes sense for the Commonwealth, the Keystone State, to play a big role in these decisions, but just, they need to move up the date, and that's going to pose logistical challenges for our election officials.
All right, coming up, we have a couple of important elections this year. Yes, it's, I hate the expression off year. I try not to use it, or odd year, because they occur, it's 2023. But the fact of the matter is we have some important elections. We're going to talk about one of them, the election to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, and we'll provide you with some hopefully helpful information to understand that election, and we'll do that following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. Well, these local elections for municipalities, counties are extremely important, and this is a big election year for those officials who have much to say about what happens in our daily lives. But we also have an election to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. We have 3 appeals courts, Commonwealth, Superior, and Supreme. Issues that come before the Commonwealth and Superior Court often end up on appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and we have an important election this year to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Stephen, take it.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania Supreme Court, highest court, and they rule on a lot of weighty issues. I really think that needs to be emphasized. So election law, they've backstopped Pennsylvania's vote by mail system. They have struck down, challenges to our elections by the Trump campaign in 2020. They potentially could rule on abortion access, and if there can be state tax dollars going to them, environmental issues, gun rights, civil liberties in terms of COVID. They've ruled on all of these issues. Oh, and congressional maps, so just to throw another one in. They've ruled on all these issues just in the past couple years. It's a 7-member court. It's had a 5-2 Democratic majority. That's down to 4-2 because of the death of Chief Justice Max Baer, who was a Democrat. He was going to retire anyway, but he's now off the court. His slot needs to be filled. So that's where this election is. And the reason, it won't change the control of the court this year. But it's also a big deal because 3 of those Democratic judges are going to be up for a retention election in 2 years. So basically, this election sets the groundwork for who will control the court for the next decade. And as I said, the court's ruling on really weighty issues that most Pennsylvanians care about, from elections to abortion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's pretty fascinating is that these elections often go without a lot of publicity. I mean, reporters like you cover them, but these candidates don't often have the big dollars to do a lot of commercial advertising.
Well, that's starting to change because I think the political operators are seeing the value of it. And, good time to say. The candidates are Republican Carolyn Carluccio. She's a Montgomery County Common Pleas judge, and Judge Daniel McCaffrey, who's a Superior Court judge. So, both of them have a lot of tenure. Both of them are highly recommended by the state bar. They actually give ratings to candidates, which is the closest thing you get to an objective rating. And, where there is some money coming in. I mean, unions and trial lawyers spend a lot to support Democratic candidates. Republican billionaire Jeff Yass puts a lot of money into the Republican side because there is just this renewed interest, and these races can cost millions of dollars now. In 2021, absolutely. I think it was ended up about $9 million, and that was just for one seat.
But that's relatively low compared to other big state offices.
Oh, it is, but it was with 3 seats up in 2015, it was $15 million. Now 1 seat's going for $9 million. There's a renewed interest in these races, and we're seeing it because of the importance. So that's just to say, don't sleep on voting for judges. They're very powerful officials, and they have a lot of sway in the Commonwealth. All
right. Well, a story that will continue to be told. Thank you. All right, coming up, we have Pennsylvania's elected State Treasurer Stacy Garrity. A number of important issues include unclaimed property. Maybe you have some out there.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, visit crossstate.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, we're going to talk about your money, unclaimed property, and I'm not talking about a scam here. Joining me to talk about that and a variety of other important issues that affect all of us in our daily lives is the State Treasurer, Stacy Garrity. Treasurer Garrity, thanks for joining me.
Terry, thanks for having me. It's always great to be here with you.
Well, it's my pleasure. All right, let's start with unclaimed property. First of all, what is unclaimed property?
Well, thank you for saying it's not a scam, because it's not. But most unclaimed property is money. In fact, we have $4.5 billion waiting for 1 out of 10 Pennsylvanians. That's right, billion with a B.
Billion, yeah.
Yes, and the average claim is roughly $1,600, and a lot of that is like uncashed checks. It can be, rebates, old bank accounts that people forgot, and it can be tangible property as well, and that typically will come from an abandoned safe deposit box.
How do you how do you claim it?
So it is very simple. So, of course, it comes back to the state after 3 years of dormancy, and that's by statute. So all people have to do is go to patreasury.gov/unclaimed property and pop their name in, and they can see if they have money waiting for them. And
you say there's a record last year?
Yes, I am incredibly proud of my team. We hit almost $274 million that was returned to hardworking Pennsylvanians, and that is a record of any treasurer.
Well, how does the record get set? I mean, we use this term record all the time. Did you have to do things that weren't done in the past?
Well, that's a great question. So what helped a lot was we upgraded our system in 2021, and that was the first time in over 15 years. And that made it a lot easier to get money back to people. It made it a lot quicker. And we also implemented a fast track that allows us, if it's a simple claim, to return it very, very quickly if it meets certain criteria. And we also joined missing money, so people can look at one website to see if they have property in just about any state.
So what you're suggesting is that many people may not be aware that they have unclaimed property.
Well, I believe most people are not aware that they have unclaimed property, because you and I talked. I travel to all 67 counties every single year, and I always push unclaimed property. And
well, how do they claim it? What do they do?
All they have to do. So right now, you have to go into our website, or you can call. We have a helpline.
The PA State Treasurer.
Yes, but patreasury.gov/unclaimed property. So a very simple form will pop up, and they can do it right online. Now you don't even have to print out the forms and mail them in. You can do it right online.
All right. As a college professor, I have to ask you this question. 529 program, what is it? And why is that important?
Yes, so basically it is a great way to save for education. So it's a fantastic program. Most families use PA 529 accounts for post-secondary education. It can also be used for K through 12. But the reason that it is so important is because it is a great way. It has significant state and federal tax benefits. So for example, like a state tax deduction on your income tax, it's tax-deferred growth, it's tax-deferred withdrawals, and it's exempt from inheritance tax. And a big advantage for Pennsylvania families is that saving in a PA 529 does not impact their state financial aid eligibility. So that's huge.
So they're still eligible to apply for state.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't impact it. So that's pretty unique for Pennsylvania.
All right. How many of these accounts exist?
So there are about 287,000 accounts.
287,000. 7,000.
Yeah, families have saved about $7 billion to pay for educational expenses.
I have to ask the same question I asked before. How do you find out? What do you do? Do you go to your website?
Yes, all you do is go to pa529.com. It's very
pa529.com. Did I get that right?
Yes, you got that right.
All right, well, let's run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the INVEST program and one property tax rent rebate checks. I bet that a lot of people are interested in that.
They are. Thank you.
Back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Treasurer Garrity, before we move on, you've cut fees recently. Say something about that.
Yeah, so for the PA529, we've cut fees, I think, 4 or 5 times. And between last year and this current fiscal year, we will have cut fees for account owners by more than $11 million. And that is so important because every one of our kids deserves to pursue their great dreams. And so cutting fees helps families, just save more for education.
Sure. All right. Well, the INVEST program helps agencies and nonprofits. But before we get into that, what is the INVEST program?
So the INVEST program, basically, it's a very easy way for local government agencies and nonprofits. So that could be like townships, counties, school districts, volunteer fire departments, and libraries to invest either short-term or long-term. So it's kind of like a money market. But the current rate, and this is fantastic, it's just a bit over 5.25%. So it is a perfect way to save, and it gives you so much more than just an interest-bearing checking account. INVEST is actually more than 30 years old.
So you're talking about money. Let's say that a municipality has some excess money in their treasury. It's a way to invest that until they need to use it for services to the folks.
Exactly. And what's great about this program is that there's no minimum deposit and you can have same-day liquidity. So it's great for short-term and long-term investments. And a lot of organizations don't know about INVEST. So we've just hired a person, basically an INVEST manager, to promote the program. And he starts this month.
Well, how many organizations use it?
Oh gosh, right now there's over 260 agencies, and they have about $1.3 billion invested in the program.
$1.3 billion.
Yes, but I think it should be really double that size. It really is a great program that a lot of these local governments don't know about.
All right, I have to go to the big one: property tax and rent rebate program.
Yes. So property tax rent rebate. It's being expanded.
Well, what is it?
Okay, so basically, if you are a property owner or you rent and you're a senior with a fixed income, or a widow or a widower, or somebody that's had a disability after the age of 18, you qualify for basically this one-time payment. And so right now, there are some improvements that are being made to the program. Basically, it's being expanded. So number one, the maximum rebate will increase from $650 to $1,000. And then also in 20...
Is that a year?
Yes, that's just a one-time payment once a year. And also the household limit income for property tax rebates and for rent rebates, that will increase to $45,000. And why that's huge is right now the income limit for homeowners is $35,000, and for renters it's $15,000. So this is going to expand to $45,000.
So you're basically explaining now who's eligible.
Yes. So Pennsylvanians age 65 and older, a widow and widowers that are age 50 and older, and Pennsylvanians with disabilities age 18 and older. And so they're able to apply once a year for this program if they qualify. And they're expanding it by just basically increasing the income limits.
Yeah.
And what's great about this is that half of your Social Security income is deducted. So it's really going to expand this program. Right now, there's about 330,000 people that qualify and apply for it every year, which is about 14 to 16% of our seniors. By expanding this, it's going to go from 330,000 to 550,000.
Yeah.
So it is a significant increase.
And it's important that these payments get made rapidly, correct?
It is. So right now, we start making the payments July 1st. But as soon as we receive the request from the Department of Revenue, we push the money out immediately, especially right now, because everybody knows, getting groceries, filling up your tank, gas is on the rise again, that this money can really help, especially our seniors on a fixed income that struggle.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how many payments did you say going out this year?
So right now, about 324,000 payments so far.
324,000 payments.
Yes. And that's about $152 million so far.
Yeah.
So I do want to mention that right now we have to wait until July 1st to start processing the payments, but we're in favor of a pay-as-you-go. So we don't think, especially right now with high inflation, that we should wait till July.
What's your role in all this?
I make the payment.
You make the payment. It's that simple.
It's that simple. So we make the payment, but what's important is that we push the payments out immediately because we recognize that people that are applying for PTRR, they could really use this money.
Well, you know what's sort of fascinating to me is that you have all these programs, and I just wonder how many people are aware that they even exist. I mean, do you do a lot of promotion of these programs? I
do, Terry. So I visit all 67 counties multiple times throughout the year, and I push these programs everywhere I go because I see, particularly in our rural areas, and 48 out of 67 counties are rural, folks don't know about these programs. And I think a lot of people, some of my relatives didn't know about the PTRR, and so I told them about it, showed them how to fill out the form.
Right.
So, people are writing Bradford County.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that if more people were aware of this, there'd be a lot more applications.
There absolutely would, and that's exactly why we had the record in unclaimed property, and that's why we're going around, really pushing just awareness that the PTRR program, has expanded. Yeah. Because I'm sure that a lot of seniors are not going to know that these income limits, changed.
Good point. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. This is a very, very important update. And we'll see you all next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.